You're walking barefoot through the marble corridors of the Temple of Aphrodite in ancient Corinth, when the realization hits you like a stone to the chest. The golden jewelry adorning your wrists and ankles isn't decoration, it's inventory tags. The silk chiton draped across your shoulders isn't clothing, it's packaging. And the smile you've practiced in polished bronze mirrors until your cheeks ached isn't expression, it's product marketing. Welcome to one of history's most misunderstood institutions, where religious devotion and sexual commerce intertwined in ways that would destroy lives for centuries. I'm about to reveal the brutal reality behind what scholars euphemistically call sacred prostitution in ancient Greece. This isn't the romanticized version you might have heard about. This is the story of women whose bodies became currency in a system that worshipped gods while sacrificing human dignity. But before we dive into this dark chapter of ancient history, let me give you some context that will completely change how you view these temples. Most people think temple prostitution was some kind of exotic religious practice, unique to ancient cultures. The truth is far more disturbing. What I'm about to show you is evidence of systematic exploitation that used religious authority to justify sexual slavery. By the end of this video, you'll understand why these women weren't holy servants, but victims of one of antiquity's most profitable enterprises. And here's what makes this even more shocking. I've spent months researching primary sources, archaeological evidence, and scholarly analyses that most people never see. What I discovered will challenge everything you thought you knew about ancient Greek society and religion. The first thing you need to understand is how you ended up in this position. Nobody dreams of becoming a temple prostitute. Most women arrived through one of three devastating pathways. Debt slavery claimed the majority. When families couldn't pay what they owed to wealthy landowners or merchants, daughters became collateral. Parents would make tearful promises about temporary service, about earning enough to buy freedom. These promises were lies wrapped in desperate hope. War provided another steady supply. Conquered cities meant captured women, and temples offered a veneer of respectability for what was essentially organized rape. The conquering armies would march their human prizes to various temples throughout Greece, where religious officials would inspect them like livestock. Age didn't matter. Beauty was negotiable. Breathing was the only requirement. The third pathway was abandonment. Unwanted daughters, often left exposed on hillsides to die, sometimes survived when temple priests discovered them. These girls grew up knowing nothing beyond temple walls, groomed from childhood to believe their bodies existed for divine service. They had no families to remember, no homes to dream of returning to, no identities beyond what the temple provided. Once inside the temple system, your previous life ceased to exist. They stripped away your original name and gave you something that reflected your new function. Common names included Aphrodisia, Eros, or Philomela. Your hair was styled according to temple regulations. Your clothing marked your status and availability. Even your daily schedule belonged to the priests who managed every aspect of the operation. The economic structure was brilliantly designed for maximum profit. Temples charged visitors' fees for everything. Entry to sacred areas cost money. Offerings to goddesses required purchased items. Private consultations with priestesses demanded additional payments. And intimate services with temple women represented the highest tier of pricing. The more exotic your background, the more you commanded. Egyptian women brought premium rates. Blonde slaves from northern territories were considered rare delicacies. But here's where the system became truly diabolical. They convinced you that this exploitation was religious devotion. Priests would explain that your body was a vessel for the goddess Aphrodite, that sexual encounters were sacred rituals, that your suffering pleased the divine. They created elaborate mythologies around temple prostitution, complete with ceremonies and prayers that made commercial rape seem like Holy Communion. The daily reality was far from sacred. You woke before dawn to to prepare for whatever the day might bring. Wealthy merchants, traveling dignitaries, local politicians, foreign ambassadors, soldiers on leave, young men celebrating coming of age, older men seeking variety from their wives. Each encounter was a transaction recorded in temple ledgers. Each violation was documented as religious activity. Your earnings never belonged to you. Temple administrators kept detailed accounts of your income, subtracting costs for housing, food, clothing, medical care, and religious ceremonies. These deductions ensured that freedom remained perpetually out of reach. The mathematics of exploitation were precisely calculated to keep you dependent while generating maximum revenue for the institution. The temple hierarchy maintained strict control through a combination of religious indoctrination and physical intimidation. Senior priestesses, often former prostitutes who had aged out of direct service, oversaw daily operations with the ruthless efficiency of prison wardens. They understood the system intimately because they had survived it, and their loyalty was purchased through small privileges and the promise that compliance meant eventual promotion within the temple structure. These women enforced rules with brutal consistency. Speaking your original name earned you a day without food. Attempting to keep personal possessions resulted in public humiliation before other temple women. Showing emotion during religious ceremonies meant isolation in underground chambers, where you could contemplate your failures in darkness. The message was clear. Your individual humanity was an obstacle to divine service that needed constant correction. Physical punishment was woven into the religious framework so seamlessly that resistance felt like blasphemy. Priests would explain that suffering purified your soul, that pain brought you closer to the goddess, that your tears were offerings more precious than gold. They developed elaborate rituals around punishment, complete with incense and prayers that transformed abuse into sacrament. The medical care you received revealed the temple's true priorities. Healers treated conditions that affected your commercial value immediately. Visible injuries, infections that could spread to clients, anything that might reduce demand, received swift attention. But chronic pain, emotional trauma, injuries that didn't impact your appearance or availability were ignored completely. Your health mattered only insofar as it generated revenue. Pregnancy presented complex challenges for temple administrators. Some temples welcomed it, advertising the services of pregnant women to clients with specific preferences. Others viewed it as lost income and employed various methods to prevent or terminate pregnancies. The decision wasn't yours to make. Temple physicians would examine you monthly, making determinations based on commercial considerations rather than your well-being or desires. The religious festivals were the most profitable periods, when pilgrims flooded the temples with coins and expectations. During these events, you might service dozens of men in a single day. The festivals lasted for weeks, with elaborate processions and ceremonies that culminated in what priests called divine communion. These gatherings generated enormous wealth for the temples, while leaving you physically and emotionally devastated. Your interactions with clients varied dramatically, but the power dynamic never changed. Wealthy merchants might request conversation and companionship along with physical services. Politicians sought discretion and sophistication. Soldiers wanted quick satisfaction without complications. Young men approached with nervous excitement mixed with entitlement. Older clients often brought specific demands informed by years of experience with temple women. This was the reality behind the marble facades and golden statues. Sacred prostitution wasn't divine service, but systematic exploitation disguised as religious devotion. These women weren't blessed servants of Aphrodite, but victims of an institution that weaponized faith to justify unspeakable cruelty. Their stories remind us that history's most horrific systems often hide behind society's most respected authorities.